I'd like to, first of all, just welcome all of you to my first official Facebook Live session. I'm Jackie Kelm, the founder of Appreciative Living. I've been doing this work for over 20 years. I've worked with thousands of people, helping them to get happier and find more joy in their life and to really function optimally. I think that's a big part of this work people sometimes don't realize. It's not just about feeling good, it's really about functioning in a way that is going to bring you more of whatever you want in your life. And right now, with all the things going on, this is especially important. So, and this is my first Facebook Live session. I have a moderator, Ashley, who's helping me out. Thank you so much, Ashley. She's moderating the comments in the chat. And so if you have questions and things, you can direct them to her. I'm going to dive into my presentation now. So, first of all, what we're going to talk about today is I want to talk about how to keep it together when the world is falling apart. And for all of us, you know, depending on where you are in the cycle of life, some of us have been around for a while. We've seen a lot of things, but this is just something that's really unprecedented in many ways. And, you know, there's not only do we have a pandemic, right? We have social unrest, we have political divisions, we have, my gosh, California is on fire. We have, you know, the 11th named storm to hit the Gulf Coast this week. And then, I mean, what's going on in France with the terrorism is, you know, it's just terrifying. And so you get to the point where you're afraid to even pick up the paper because you just don't know what's next. And so what I want to talk about today is how do we stay sane in all of this? How do we cope? And what are the skills we need now to be able to actually handle all this? Because guess what? They're different than what we needed 10 years ago. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And so, first of all, what does it even mean to stay sane, right? So there's three parts that I'm going to talk about. So first of all is thinking clearly, right? You want to be able to evaluate what's going on around you and be able to analyze it and figure out what makes sense. The second thing is acting appropriately. You want to take appropriate action. You don't want to get all caught up in doing sort of the craziness and doing some of the crazy things you see around you, right? You want to find the meaningful action that's really going to make a difference and be right for you. And the third thing is emotional stability and feeling good. So, you know, a lot of us right now are walking around with kind of this low level anxiety because there's just so much happening around us. And so how do you get to this good feeling place, this more emotionally stable place? So that's what we're going to talk about. And in order to talk about this, I'm going to use some props because these are my props in the spirit of the chaotic world we live in. And, you know, 2 days ago, I decided to do this presentation, which 10 years ago, I would have not done a presentation until I had at least 2 months to plan it and design it, get all my slides together and make it perfect. So 2 days ago, I decided to do this. And then yesterday, I find out I can't use slides on Facebook. So here we are living in the chaos. And, you know, this is how you roll with it. You just step in and you go with it. So here we are. So I want to talk about the brain today. And there are really kind of two parts to our brain. There is this reptilian part and this, whoops, I got them backwards. The reptilian part, oh, wow, this is backwards on Facebook. This isn't mirroring. Here we go. The changes just never end, do they? Okay, so let's start here. So the reptile brain, all right, and probably, you know, a lot of you've probably heard of this, but if not, give me a minute to just go through this really quick. So if you think of our brain, which is this incredibly complex organ in our head, right, we have the reptilian part, which is the part that really started way back when we were cave people, and this was the only brain we had. And this brain is our primitive brain. It has other names, primal brain, so forth. This brain does a lot of really important things. So it controls our heart rate and our breathing and all our body functions to keep us alive. And it was designed initially to scan for threats and to respond accordingly to keep us alive. And so actually there's a lot of research around this now that's interesting. It shows that in some estimates, we scan for threats at the rate of about 5 times a second at all times. Even now while you're watching this video, this is going on in this reptilian part of your brain, and your reptilian brain kind of sits back here. It's at the base of your head and it hangs out, and so it does a lot of really important things. Well, that's all good and great, except when there's a threat, you know, back in the cave days, you needed to respond physically because your threats were all physical. It was starvation and hunger and wild animals attacking you. And so you had to be able to defend yourself and protect yourself and run away and do all kinds of things physically. So, that was great. So that's how that brain operated. Well, then we evolved, and over many, many, I don't know how many years, lots of years, right? We started to discover from a survival standpoint that when we started to work together and form communities, that we survived even better. And so now we needed some new skills. And so the brain began to evolve very slowly with another part that we call, or I'm calling, the cortex. So this is the reptile, this is an alligator, and this is a turtle, which is the cortex. And then I also just recently learned a minute ago that I can't get them both in the picture. It turns out that a turtle's actually a reptile. But these are the only two stuffed animals I could find in my kids' bedroom because they're in college now. So you know what? It is what it is. So we've got the new cortex. So the cortex is the thinking brain. Well, now we needed to do all this other higher analytical thinking and problem solving. And we needed to also work together, which was a new thing. Before we were fighting all of our cave people and enemies. And now we're like, hey, let's plant some vegetables together, right? So we had to work with other people. And what happened is that this brain continued to grow. Now, the pace of evolution is really, really slow. So yes, we've got this cortex, but man, it's really behind. We still got the reptile running a lot of the show. And what does that mean? Well, the other thing to know about these two brains is that the reptile brain and all the fight or flight, when that's active, it produces chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline that make us feel bad and anxious. And a lot of us are feeling this these days. We're like, ooh, I got this feeling like things just aren't right. The cortex brain has chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. These are the things that make us feel good. See how happy he is. He's very happy. This guy's actually looks kind of happy too for an alligator. So, but this is the brain that really is the one that we need for today's world, right? Because this is what we need to survive. And the other thing to know about this is these brains can't be active at the same time. All right. So what does that mean? Well, we've only got one brain with these two parts, and it's almost like a puzzle. So you've got your reptile brain who's back here. If everything's going well, you've got your reptile brain here. I can't tell if you can see all this. And then your cortex, which kind of sits on the top of your head. So he's here. So this is how you are when you feel happy and you're functioning well. Your cortex is thinking, you're looking around, you're analyzing, you're cooperating. You got your reptilian brain down here, and he's scanning for threats in case a car comes out and you got to jump out of the way or whatever. But they're happy, they're in balance, right? That's how we want to be. Well, guess what happens? Now it's a pandemic. Oh my gosh. We're getting scared. So what happens? The reptile brain starts to get active and the cortex starts to shut down because they can't be both there at the same time. And depending on how stressed out you are, you might be a little stressed and you got a little bit of reptile and you've lost a little cortex. Or if you get really stressed, like really scared, the alligator just, there goes the cortex. Cortex is gone. And now guess who's, oh, he's backwards. Guess who's running the show? You got the alligator running the show. You got your reptilian brain's in charge. What does that mean? Now you're freaked out. You don't have access to higher level thinking. You're not going to cooperate with anybody. You pretty much want to fight anyone who shows up, or you want to run away from them, or all kinds of other things like that. Okay, so the bottom line is, because of all the things going around here, we've got the reptile running the show. Our brain is wired backwards for what's required for today's world, literally backwards. So let's look at this a little bit more. What does that mean? Okay, so the reptilian brain. So let's say, so in today's world, okay, you've got all these crazy social unrest. You got to think, should I wear a mask? Should I not wear a mask? Should I go out? Should I stay home? Should I go with these people? Should I not? This is thinking. This is not a physical threat in the sense of you're not running out from oncoming cars or whatever. What do you need to do? You need to analyze. This is the brain that analyzes. What does this brain do? This brain reacts. It's like, wah, we're not doing that. Forget that. Wah. Okay, what do we need to do? We need to cooperate. We need to get together with the people around us and figure out what we're going to do. What does this one do? Fight. No, this brain's like, no, we don't want to cooperate. We need to evaluate. We need to look and see, gee, should I do this? Should I not? This one wants to criticize. Oh, you're bad. You're wrong. This one's like, well, let's talk. Let's see. Right? This one likes to listen to new ideas, get information. This one defends. I'm right. Listen to me. Okay. This one takes responsibility. This one blames. This one connects. This one avoids. This one unites. This one polarizes. Polarizes. Have you ever thought about the polarization going on around all of these topics? Why? The reptiles are in charge. They're out there trying to get their way and fight and kill and do whatever it takes. This is not what we need. This is the opposite of what we need, right? And on top of this, guess what? This one feels really bad. I got cortisol going. I'm scared. I'm mad. I'm frustrated. This is not what we need. This is what we need. What is this one? This one feels good. This one's thinking clearly. We go back to what is it we're trying to accomplish here? This is the brain that's going to get us there. Okay. All right. So staying sane, again, 3 things: thinking clearly, acting appropriately, being emotionally stable. How do we get the cortex to rule, right? We got this. How do we get this? Well, this is what I call skill up. This comes out of a conference I just attended recently where we realized that we need new skills. We've got to teach our brain new tricks. So if we wait for the brain to evolve, it's going to be too late, right? We're going to be waiting millions of years. There are things you can do right now to speed up that evolution of your brain, to begin to shift to be more in the cortex more regularly so that you can function better, you can feel better. And there's 3 skills. And I have this great PowerPoint slide I can't show you. So you're going to have to listen. All right, the 3 skills are: number 1, talk to yourself. Number 1, you've got to get your brain to see that negative emotion is not serving you. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Number 2 is retrain your brain. There are daily practices you can do. I'm going to share one with you today that will help rewire your brain so that naturally you start to have the cortex more on top and the alligator where he belongs down below. All right. So that's a retraining process. It's like going to the gym. It's like building a new muscle in your brain. And then number 3 is what I call crisis management, or get off the cliff. These are tools you need when disaster strikes. Something horrible happens. You know, maybe we got the election coming up on Tuesday and maybe your candidate doesn't win and it puts you in a tailspin. How do you deal with those in the moment situations? And that's something that's like the 3rd piece of this. Okay, so we're going to go through this, and I'm just going to take about 10 more minutes. For those of you, I didn't tell you how much time we were going to be, so 10 more minutes, and we'll run through these. So the first one, skill 1, is talking to yourself. Negative emotion is not serving you. And this is, as I even say this, your brain, your reptile's like, ah, she's going to kill us. She's going to kill us. No, it's not true. Yes, right? So hear me out. All right. This is based on research, all kinds of research going on out there. So people like David Rock, Your Brain at Work, Barbara Fredrickson, Positive Psychology Community, Martin Seligman, Sonia Lyubomirsky, and then their books, you know, Rick Hansen and James Cleary and others who talk about all this research going on about what happens when the reptile runs the show.